got into the car and my friend was there, and I was like, that's weird, what are you doing in here? And then my dad got into the back, my mom got into the back of the car with me, and so it was my friend, me, and my mum. We were driving there, and I was like, I knew something was up, but I didn't really think what it was. Hi, hello again. Hi to my regular viewers, and hello and welcome to anyone who is new here. Take a browse of my channel if you're new here, and if you like what you see, don't forget to subscribe. As promised, here is part 2 of my introduction to my new mental health series on my channel. If you haven't already watched part 1, pause and go watch that, and then you can come back and watch this. I feel like it's essential to watch both, especially if you plan on following the ongoing mental health series that I am releasing. The rest of you, go make a cup of tea, cup of coffee, food, whatever, juice, and get comfortable, because this is going to be kind of a story time video. It is going to be about my personal history with mental health issues. This video is going to be probably the hardest video I will create on this series, as I will be delving into my own personal struggles, and that is hard for me to talk about, even though it has been 10 years since I've truly struggled really badly with my mental health. I have a good handle on it now, and although I have my moments where I have to go back to therapy, back on medication, it's never been as bad as it was 10 years ago, but it's still so hard for me to talk about. It's a very personal topic, but like I said in the previous video, it's essential for me to talk about it, so you guys can know where I have been, where I have struggled, and maybe some of you guys might be able to relate. It might just feel like you're not alone, and also it'll just tell you why I know what I know and where I'm getting my information from. So I'm going to be delving into my mental health history from where I think it began, because it began so long ago now that I'm not even sure for definite when exactly it began, but I'm going to tell you where I distinctly remember having issues, and going all the way through my struggle right up until it got really, really bad, and then on from there to the point I am at today. So it may be a long video. I'm going to try and keep it quite short and snappy because I don't want to bore you guys. And yeah, so because of the nature of this video and the potential viewers I'm going to be reaching, I really have to put this out there now. Obviously, I'm going to be putting on the title as well, big trigger warning. I'm going to be discussing many different things that can trigger people. Obviously, I can't anticipate what's going to trigger who. Everyone has their own individual triggers, but I will be forewarning in a slide just before I discuss certain topics that are very obvious triggers. So if you are in a difficult place right now, or have the potential to be triggered and don't want to be triggered, it might be best for you to click away, or watch this when you're in a better frame of mind, or watch it with somebody close with you if you really want to watch it. Suicide, self-harm, hospitalization, sexual assault, those are the main ones now that I know I will definitely be delving into, because they are a big part of my history. So there might be other triggers along the way that I haven't quite thought of, but those are definitely ones that are going to be in there. So if any of those are major triggers for you right now, I really recommend not watching this. Okay, so now on to the dreaded part for me, my story. From as long as I can remember, I have been a little bit depressed. I have been suicidal to an extent. Every mental health issue has a spectrum, and it's the same with suicidal behavior, ideation, everything. It for me at least, it's definitely on a spectrum. There is the milder form is where I think it would be nice if I just didn't wake up tomorrow. And then obviously the more severe extent of it would be planning, prepping for actually committing the deed. So, and then there's obviously somewhere in between there So when you say to a doctor that you're suicidal, they are aware, majority of them are aware that there is that spectrum of suicide, and that it doesn't mean that you're just about to kill yourself as soon as you leave the office, you know. So that is why I said in the previous video that don't be afraid to say anything that you might be thinking, because I think a lot of people are afraid to say that they're feeling suicidal. But that's important to tell the doctor, because it tells the doctor how severe your depression has gotten or is getting. And they're not going to freak out and think that, oh, you know, if they let you go, you're going to kill yourself. They know that there is, you know, that the just because you're thinking about it doesn't mean that you're going to action it. And just because you're planning on actioning it doesn't mean that you're going to action it right now, right away, before you can get seen by somebody. So they're aware that there is some time frame there. So yeah, from the age of, for as long as I remember, I was suicidal. And I would say, for absolute definite, I can say when I was about the age of 10, I was definitely depressed and I was suicidal, but it was on the milder form of it. So it was, oh, I hope I don't have to wake up tomorrow. I hope I just die in my sleep. Simple things like that. I wasn't planning anything. I didn't even really think of it as a suicidal thought. I didn't even think that I was depressed. I knew that I was sad, but I really didn't know the extent of what was going on in my mind. I was too young to really comprehend what that was anyway. Nothing was going on in my life at that time to make me depressed. There's not always a reason. I grew up with both my parents around, you know, it was a typical upbringing, and we were relatively well off. You know, we always had food on our table, I had a privileged upbringing. Then when I was in school, I was a bit isolated. I tended to isolate myself. I think I just thought I was very weird. I was very strange, and I purposefully isolated myself so that to protect myself from people thinking I'm weird and isolating me. So I thought if I chose to be on my own, then I couldn't be hurt by it. So I did that when I was in primary school, and then when I went to go into secondary school, I decided that I actually wanted to have a life. I wanted to have friends. I wanted to enjoy my life, and I wasn't going to purposefully isolate myself. I was going to make an effort to make friends and enjoy it. So I did. I made that effort. And one of my friends in school then was basically essentially a mean girl. So she was a mean girl, and in our group of friends, she just used to rule the roost basically and manipulate all of us into feeling certain ways and things. So that wasn't great for me. And for me, it definitely worsened what already was kind of there. By fourth year, so by the time I was 15 or 16, she had left the school we were in. So life was great. I was enjoying myself. I had my group of friends, and I didn't have her bringing me down, and so I was really enjoying life. And that's when I had something happen to me, and that thing is still so difficult for me to talk to. I was sexually assaulted. I say sexually assaulted. I was essentially raped, but I just don't like using that term because it didn't happen in the typical way what you see on TV. So I still have my issues with that, obviously. So that happened, and that just spiraled everything out of control then. And I actually had started self-harming when I was 13. I think it was around the time that this friend really started to become a mean girl, and it affected me, and the self-harm started then. And it was minor. It was few and far between. I don't even know what made me do it. I think I don't know where I got the idea from. I think I had read about it in a magazine, and that just started the ball rolling. And then obviously when this sexual assault happened, I really started to get bad with the self-harm. It became an everyday occurrence. Just got worse and worse. I just got worse and worse with self-harm. I just got more and more depressed and more suicidal. And then it all kind of came to a head when I was 18, and I had decided, that's it, this is my last year. I was due to go on holidays with my family, and I had planned, right, I'll go on holidays with my family. I'm not going to, that's already booked, that's planned. I'm not going to ruin that holiday by killing myself beforehand. So I had decided to do it when I got back. Luckily, my boyfriend at the time, I had met him online. I had met him in a forum for people suffering with depression and other mental health issues, and as soon as I had met him, I had told him that I didn't want to develop any sort of relationship with him or anything because I was planning to kill myself. And of course, even though I had said all that, a relationship had developed, and he got very upset when I told him I was going to still stick to, I guess he thought or hoped that he was going to be able to cure me or, fix me or whatever. So he got really upset when he found out that I was still planning on killing myself, and he told that to my friend, and she passed it on to my parents. And that is when my parents intervened, and they got me to a psychiatric hospital. The way they did it was interesting. I was at a friend's house, and I was supposed to stay the night at hers, and my dad rang me and said that I had an appointment that I had to go to, a doctor's appointment, which I thought was very strange because the time that it was at, but I was just like, okay, yeah. So he said that he'd pick me up and that he'd bring me back after the appointment. So I was like, okay, fine. Got into the car, and my friend was there. And I was like, that's weird. What are you doing in here? And then my dad got into the back. My mom got into the back of the car with me. And so it was my friend, me, and my mom. We were driving there, and I was like, I knew something was up, but I didn't really think what it was. And that was when my parents decided to tell me then that they were taking me to a psychiatric hospital. And obviously they had planned it so that I'd have a friend there for, I guess, support, and she was the friend that had told them. And then I guess they planned it so that my friend would sit on one side and my mum would sit on the other side in case I tried to jump out of the car. Now, I don't think that I would have done that, but that's me in my healthy frame of mind, or healthier frame of mind now, saying that. I was not in a very good frame of mind at all back then, and who knows what I could have done. That is when my mental health recovery started. Now, I had already been seeing somebody, so my parents knew that I was depressed, but they hadn't known I was suicidal and really actively planning my suicide. I was seeing somebody, and I was also speaking to my school counsellor. So I was seeing two different people, but they weren't psychologists or psychiatrists or anything. They were counsellors. By being admitted to the psychiatric unit, although I was not happy at the time, I was really, really annoyed, it was the best thing for me. It was my lifesaver. Now, looking back, at the time, I just thought, this is ridiculous, I'm just going to do it when I get out anyway, whatever. I met with my psychologist while I was there, and he was the guy who I saw then onwards. I didn't go back to my counsellor, I didn't go back to my school counsellor. So this was the psychologist I saw from then onwards. Lovely guy, really nice. And I met with my psychiatrist. I was completely and totally evaluated for my mental health, make sure that they knew what they were treating. At first I hated going to therapy. It really does it gets hard before it gets easier. It opened up a lot of stuff for me, and there were times that I was coming out of therapy feeling worse than when I went in, and I was crying a lot of the time in there, or there were also times I went in there and I sat there and I didn't talk for most of the time, or, you know, there's a long process with therapy. It's definitely not a quick fix. Because I was so bad, I also had a psychiatrist who was sorting out my medication, and I would see her quite regularly as well to make sure that I was on the right medication. I was given medication. What they said to me, and it really does make sense, is that this was to help me get to a point where therapy would actually work for me, because I was so bad that therapy alone wasn't enough. I was just so hell-bent on trying to kill myself that that's all I could think about, and I couldn't actively work with my psychologist to get to a point where I'm at now. So, and there were over that time that I was in therapy, there were a couple of attempts at suicide, and they were failures, obviously. And I look back and think, I feel so bad for my family, what I put them through for that time. And my memory of that time is really blurry. Like, you know, your memory when you've been drinking, that's what my memory is like. And I know some of that's down to probably the medication I was on, but I also think it's to the fact that my mind wasn't mine. Like, I wasn't myself at that time. The decisions I made and the stuff that I thought was not normal, and not, like, when I think about it now, I'm like, that's ridiculous. People don't realize that your mind changes when you suffer with depression, but your mind is not yours. Not completely when you are struggling with depression, at least from my experience. I think I did intensive therapy for a year or more, at least once a week, sometimes twice a week. I did an outpatient program for 2 weeks after I was released from the hospital, so what they did when they were going to release you was they let you go home on like a weekend release, and then when they did release you, you'd have to go to this day therapy for 2 weeks, or I guess some people may have had longer or whatever, but I only had the 2 weeks of going to that therapy session every day for like a full day. It was like school basically. And then after that, then went and started my proper therapy, and I did weekly to twice weekly therapy, and I also did group therapy once a week as well. So it was quite intensive. And I think it was only a year or a year and a half that I was doing it before everything started to sort of click into place. And, you know, when you think about it in the grand scheme of things, how long I was suffering for, to the point that I was actually feeling like not suicidal anymore, quite well, happy, I could kind of cope with my emotions and things like that. A year is not that long. So if you can dedicate a year of your life to like intensive therapy and come out like a whole different person, it's pretty good. So that's my experience. And then since then, I have had a lot of changes in my life and dealt with them quite well, I think. I moved over to Edinburgh and studied over there, and didn't do well, left and came home with my tail between my legs basically. I moved over here. I went on holidays with my friends and I met a boy, and I moved over within less than a year of meeting him. I moved over to England to live with him, and then we had our two babies. And here we are now. And in that time, I've definitely had moments where I've struggled. Obviously, I have had slip-ups with the self-harm, and particularly in the pregnancies, I've had some pretty low points with my mood. But I'm so self-aware of it now that I know when I'm going down the wrong path, and I'm able to go and see a doctor. And these days, the doctors are just so good with stuff like that, especially over in the UK. You know, you go see them, tell them how you're feeling, and they get you to fill out a form and they discuss things with you, and then they discuss your options, you know, therapy, if you want medication, you know, do you want to just wait and see how it goes, whatever. They discuss it all through with you. I have had to go back on medication the 2 times that I was pregnant, and I'm still currently on medication now, but hoping to get off it. We'll see. We've had, it's been a lot harder this time around with Amber because she has been struggling with reflux, and we are also thinking it's a milk allergy as well. So that has made things harder for me, and I've not been able to come off the medication as quickly as I was with Robin, but that's just life. It makes me able to function. I don't feel suicidal, I don't feel down, I'm able to be a good mom for my 2 babies when I'm on the medication. So I'm not against medication at all because I've seen it work. I think that's everything. I think that's my whole story. That wasn't as hard as I thought. I didn't go in too much detail though, so I hope you guys don't mind that I don't think it's necessary, and I don't feel comfortable to at this moment in time. I think what I've told you is the relevant information, and any of the in-depth stuff, that's just for me, at least for now. I might one day be able to talk in depth about the struggles that I've been through, about the individual experiences, but for the moment I'm not ready to do that, and I don't see that happening anytime soon. So sorry. I am going to leave links in the description for people who might be struggling at the moment. As I did in my last video, I'll be leaving them in the description of all the videos that I do on mental health, for any websites or helpful like helplines or anything like that that I find. I'm going to leave the links in the description so that you guys can contact people if you need to. Hopefully this wasn't too triggering for anybody. Like I said, I didn't go into too much depth, so I think that might have made it a little bit less triggering for people. If you liked this video, please put a thumbs up, leave a comment if you guys have had a similar experience or any responses to what I have said. Subscribe if you're liking this content, and don't forget to press the notification bell so that you can be notified whenever I release a video, although I will be releasing at 7 p.m. GMT every Sunday for this series anyway. Okay, I think that's it. Bye. Obviously I can't anticipate what will trigger. Obviously I can't anticipate. Trying to record a video. I don't even know where I had